They threw me out of the house I'd paid taxes on for 7 years, dumped my belongings on the curb like bad debt. 3 months later, I bought that same house anonymously and placed late fee clauses right in front of their faces. Every first of the month, my parents line up to wire transfer rent to the daughter they evicted. You ever been stripped of everything by your own blood? Watched them erase your contributions and thought, this time I won't cry, I'll sign. This is about signing a legal revenge contract and starting over. My name is Avery Collins, and on that Monday morning when the sheriff's deputy knocked on my door at 8:45, I was still in my Summit and Crew logistics uniform from the night shift. The badge clipped to my chest read Operations Coordinator, but what it really meant was I spent 10 hours tracking 18-wheelers across interstate highways while my parents slept in the master bedroom they'd never paid a dime for. Notice to vacate, the deputy said, handing me the paper like it was routine. Behind him, my mother Linda stood in her quilted robe, examining her manicure. Doug, my stepfather, leaned against his pickup truck, the same one I'd paid to repair last spring when the transmission blew. Neither of them would meet my eyes. 72 hours, Linda said, her voice carrying that practiced indifference she'd perfected over the years. We did a cash-out refinance. The house is legally ours, always has been. The paper trembled in my hands. $180,000. That's what they'd extracted from the equity I'd built with 7 years of mortgage payments, roof repairs, HVAC replacements. My name had never made it onto the title. We'll add you later, sweetheart, Linda had promised back then, when I was 26 and stupid enough to believe family meant something. By Thursday noon, everything I owned sat on the curb of Brookstone Drive. The dining table I'd bought for Thanksgiving dinners, the ones where Linda always found something to criticize about my cooking. The bookshelf I'd assembled myself while Doug watched TV, commenting that women these days think they can do everything. Photo albums, tax documents, the ceramic bowls from my grandmother, wrapped hastily in bath towels. Mrs. Kincaid from across the street pretended to water her petunias, but I saw her taking photos with her phone. The Brennans slowed their morning jog to stare. Even the mail carrier, Roberto, who'd always chatted with me about his daughter's college applications, couldn't look me in the eye as he stepped around my boxes. Piper emerged from the house around 2 p.m., my younger half-sister who'd never worked a day in her 22 years. She picked through my things like they were garage sale items, taking a lamp here, a throw pillow there. Mom says you can keep the old dishes, she offered, as if this was generosity. The locksmith arrived at 3:30 p.m. I watched him change the locks on the door I'd painted sage green 3 summers ago, the color Linda had called too trendy, but now claimed she'd chosen herself. Doug supervised the work, occasionally glancing my way with what might have been shame or might have been satisfaction I couldn't tell anymore. When the sheriff's deputy returned at 4 p.m. for the final walkthrough, I had to sign the surrender of premises form. My signature looked wrong, shaky, like someone else's hand was holding the pen. Linda stood in the doorway of what used to be my home, her arms crossed, that tight smile she wore when she'd won something. It's business, Avery, she said. Nothing personal. Doug and I need to think about our retirement. I loaded the last box into my Honda Civic, the one I'd bought used and paid off myself. Thank God, and didn't look back. Not once. But I did stop at the county clerk's office before it closed at 5 p.m. I requested copies of every document, the deed, the refinance papers, the notice of default that Mrs. Kincaid had whispered about when she'd seen me hauling garbage bags to my car. The clerk, a tired woman named Denise, looked at me over her readers. You, the homeowner. No, I said, and for the first time that day, my voice didn't crack. But I'm going to be. That night, in my friend Maya's guest room, I spread those documents across the floor like evidence at a crime scene, every Zelle payment I'd made for 7 years, screenshotted and saved, every receipt for repairs, filed chronologically in a accordion folder I'd grabbed from the curb, the email where Linda had written, "Thanks for handling the mortgage again this month. Honey, Dad's work is slow. They thought they'd erased me from that house like a bad paint job, covered me over with their refinance and their legal rights. But I'd learned something from all those nights tracking logistics, watching shipments move across computer screens, understanding how ownership was just paperwork and strategy and timing. I opened my laptop and started researching foreclosure laws in Ohio. By 2 a.m., I'd found their first missed payment. By 3 a.m., I'd discovered they were already 2 months behind. I didn't cry. Not once. But I did start taking notes. The house at 4827 Brookstone Drive wasn't supposed to be mine. Not at first. When Linda married Doug in 2016, I was 26, fresh from a promotion at Summit & Crew, and desperate to prove I could be the daughter she'd always wanted, successful, responsible, nothing like my father who'd left when I was 3. "Just help us with the mortgage for a little while," Linda had said, sitting at the kitchen table of our old apartment, the eviction notice from that place still visible under a stack of magazines. "Doug's contracting work is picking up. We'll refinance in your name once our credit improves." 7 years. That's how long a little while lasted. The first payment I made was June 2017, $2,147, transferred from my checking account while Linda and Doug were in Vegas, celebrating their first anniversary with money they'd borrowed from Doug's brother. I have the screenshot, saved in a folder labeled House. By December, I was paying every month. The roof came next. February 2019, the worst ice storm in a decade, and water pouring through the ceiling into what would become Piper's room. $18,400. Doug had been unemployed for 3 months his back, he said, though he seemed fine when he was working on his buddy's Camaro. I maxed out 2 credit cards and took a personal loan. "We'll pay you back when we refinance," Linda promised, not looking up from her phone. Then the HVAC system died in the middle of July 2020, $9,200. I worked 16-hour doubles for 2 months, monitoring trucks through the night and picking up data entry shifts during the day. My eyes burned from staring at screens, but I made the down payment while Doug complained about the brand of unit I'd chosen. "Should have gone with Carrier," he said, as if he'd contributed a dime. I painted every room, replaced the kitchen backsplash tile by tile, watching YouTube videos at 2 a.m. to learn how to grout properly, fixed the fence when the neighbor's tree fell on it because Doug's back was acting up again, installed a security system when the break-ins started happening 3 blocks over, 2,000 here, 500 there, always with Linda's promise. "We're family. It all stays in the family." The dining room table I'd bought solid oak from an estate sale became command central for their finances. I'd sit there after my night shifts, helping Linda figure out payment plans for Doug's gambling debts, the ones he swore were just a rough patch. The spreadsheet I made to track their expenses versus income is still on my laptop. Every cell highlighted in red was something I covered: electric bills, property taxes, the new water heater when the old one flooded the basement. But my name never made it onto the title. Next month became after the holidays, became when the market's better, became silence whenever I brought it up. Mrs. Kincaid told me things, careful whispers over the fence while I weeded the garden I'd planted. "Saw a notice on your door yesterday," she said in January, 2 months before they evicted me. "The bank one. Your mother took it down quick, but I saw. Later, that refinance company's been by 3 times this week. The receipts tell the story Linda wants to forget. Every Zelle memo I wrote mortgage May, property tax installment, roof payment 3 of 12. My friend Maya laughed when she saw them all spread out on her guest room floor. "You documented everything like you knew this would happen." I hadn't known. I'd believed them. The house absorbed $93,000 of my money over 7 years, not counting sweat equity. Meanwhile, Linda posted Facebook photos. "So blessed to own our dream home, and Doug's renovations are coming along beautifully." My co-workers thought I still lived at home like a failure to launch millennial. I let them think it because the truth was worse. I was the silent partner in my parents' fraud. The final insult came when I pulled the refinance records. They'd told the lender it was an owner-occupied refinance, better rates that way, listed their combined income as $90,000 annually, Doug hadn't made more than $20,000 in any year I'd been paying their bills. And the $180,000 cash out. The paper trail led to a flashy truck for Doug, a small business investment that turned out to be a pyramid scheme, and $38,000 that simply vanished the week they threw me out. They'd used my stability to build their house of cards, then knocked me out before it collapsed. But cards leave traces, paper trails, documents, and I had 7 years' worth, organized chronologically, backed up in 3 places, ready to play. Maya Delgado found me on her doorstep at 11 p.m. The night of my eviction, surrounded by garbage bags of clothes and clutching my laptop like a life preserver. We'd been friends since college, but she'd become something more useful, a real estate attorney at Harbor Row Legal. "Stop apologizing and start strategizing," she said, pouring me wine in her kitchen while I ugly cried into a tissue. "You're not homeless, you're between properties, and we're going to fix this." The next morning, she drove me to the Cuyahoga County Recorder's office. The building smelled like old paper and disinfectant, fluorescent lights humming over worn linoleum. Maya knew exactly which desk to approach, which forms to request. "Pull everything on 4827 Brookstone Drive," she told the clerk. "Deed, liens, notice of default, assignment of mortgage everything." The stack came back thick as a phone book. Maya flipped through it with practiced efficiency while I watched Linda's signature appear again and again, Doug's shaky handwriting next to hers. Then she stopped, finger on a paragraph of legal text. "They're 3 months behind," she said. "Adjustable rate mortgage kicked in. Payment went from $2,100 to $3,400. There's already a notice of default filed." My stomach twisted. They never told me. Of course they didn't. "Look," she pointed to another document. "The bank's already initiated foreclosure proceedings. Sheriff's sale is scheduled in 6 weeks. That's when Reed Parson entered the picture. Maya called him from the courthouse steps a mortgage broker who specialized in distressed properties. He met us at a Starbucks downtown, wearing a suit that had seen better days but carrying a briefcase that meant business. "You want to buy your parents out from under themselves," he said, not a question. "It's cold, but it's clean. I like it." The math was simple once Reed laid it out. The outstanding mortgage $290,000. The house's current market value $320,000. At a sheriff's sale, it might go for as low as $240,000 if I played it right. But I needed to hide my identity. Needed what Reed called a corporate veil. "Erie Threshold Holdings, LLC," Maya announced 3 days later, sliding the articles of organization across her desk. "Registered in Delaware with a nominee manager service. Your name appears nowhere on public documents." So, Noah Pierce came next, an angel investor Maya knew from another case. We met him at his office in Terminal Tower, looking out over Cleveland's industrial spread. I pitched him like I was selling logistics services ROI, market comparables, rental income projections. He listened, asked 3 questions about the property's condition, then wrote a check for $60,000. 12% interest, 18-month term, he said. "Don't make me regret betting on revenge." The county courthouse became my second home. I pulled every document property tax records showing my Zelle payments, code violations Doug had ignored, the original purchase price from 2016. I photographed the disconnect between what Linda and Doug claimed to earn and what they actually brought in. Found the HELOC they'd taken out $38,000 withdrawn in cash the week of my eviction. Reed taught me the vocabulary of destruction, deficiency judgment, right of redemption, strict foreclosure. Maya showed me how to read between the legal lines, how Linda and Doug's adjustable rate gamble had turned into a death spiral. "The bank doesn't want the house," Reed explained, highlighting numbers on his tablet. "They want their money. If you come in with cash, quick close, as is condition, you can probably get it for 75 cents on the dollar." I hired a property inspector using the LLC's name, watched him document every code violation the deck railing Doug had built without permits, now rotting and 4 inches below legal height. The electrical outlet in the bathroom bare wires Doug had fixed with electrical tape. The foundation crack I'd begged them to address, now spreading like a fault line. $40,000 in necessary repairs, the inspector concluded. I smiled. Every defect lowered my offer price. Maya drew up the purchase strategy while I worked my night shifts, tracking trucks and saving every penny. We'd attend the sheriff's sale, bid through a proxy Reed would arrange. If we won, we'd have 14 days to close. The deed would transfer to Erie Threshold Holdings, LLC. Linda and Doug would become month-to-month tenants, subject to Ohio rental law. They won't know it's you until you want them to, Maya promised. And by then, all the paperwork will be ironclad. The night before the sale, I couldn't sleep. I sat in Maya's guest room, staring at the photo I'd saved on my phone the last family Christmas at Brookstone Drive. Linda was smiling, Doug raising a beer, Piper on her phone. I was in the corner, barely visible, holding the camera timer. They'd erased me from that house once. Now I was going to write myself back in as their landlord. The escrow account opened at 9 a.m., sharp on a Tuesday. $60,000 of Noah Pierce's money, sitting in wait like a loaded weapon. Maya had me sign everything as Managing Member, Erie Threshold Holdings, LLC, a signature I'd practiced until it felt natural. Nothing like the shaky handwriting on my eviction papers. Reed worked the phones from his office, a converted supply closet that smelled like burnt coffee and ambition. I listened to him negotiate with the bank's loss mitigation department, his voice shifting from sympathetic to forceful as needed. My client is prepared to close in 21 days, he said, feet up on his desk. Cash deal, as is no inspection contingency. But we need a discounted payoff. The property needs $40,000 in repairs just to meet code. The bank countered at $270,000. Reed laughed, actually laughed into the phone. Have you seen the inspection report? The deck is a lawsuit waiting to happen. The electrical could burn the place down tomorrow. $245,000, or we walk. They settled at $252,000. Meanwhile, I built my paper fortress. Every document Maya had taught me to gather was copied, notarized, filed in triplicate. The property inspection report grew to 30 pages with photos black mold in the basement corner Doug had fixed with Kills paint, the furnace filter that hadn't been changed since I'd done it myself 18 months ago, the bathroom fan venting directly into the attic insulation. Code enforcement would have a field day, the inspector whispered, like he was sharing state secrets. You want me to flag this with the city? Not yet, I said, but keep the report detailed. The title search revealed more surprises. Doug had filed a mechanic's lien against the property 2 years ago for work he'd supposedly done, $8,000 he'd paid himself from the refinance. There was also a judgment from a credit card company. $15,000 Linda had ignored until they'd garnished Doug's sporadic paychecks. These actually help us, Maya explained, highlighting the liens. The bank has to clear these at closing. More motivation to take our offer. I scheduled the sheriff's sale for a Wednesday at 10 a.m., knowing Linda would be at her weekly hair appointment and Doug would be sleeping off his Tuesday night poker game. Reed arranged for a proxy bidder, a paralegal named Marcus who did this twice a week and knew exactly how to work the room. Keep your head down, bid in 5,000 increments. Don't go over 260, Reed instructed. The house flippers will assume it's not worth it with all the repairs needed. But I couldn't stay away. I sat in the back of the courthouse room, baseball cap pulled low, watching Marcus hold his paddle with practiced boredom. 3 other bidders showed interest, 2 house flippers I recognized from their YouTube channels, and an older woman representing a rental company. The auctioneer's voice echoed off the wood paneling. Property at 4827 Brookstone Drive. Minimum bid, $168,000. The flippers dropped out at $220. The repair costs had scared them. The rental company pushed to $245 before shaking their heads. Marcus raised his paddle one more time. $252,000, he said, voice flat as week-old beer. Going once, twice. Sold to bidder number 47. I slipped out before the gavel finished falling, my heart hammering so hard I thought everyone could hear it. In the courthouse bathroom, I threw up twice, then washed my face with shaking hands. I'd just bought my childhood home, my parents' house, my house. The next 2 weeks moved in fast forward: wire transfers, document signatures, title insurance, deed preparation. Maya handled everything with Erie Threshold Holdings listed as buyer. The bank cleared the liens, happy to get their money. The sheriff's deed was recorded at 2:43 p.m. on a Thursday. I owned 4E827 Brookstone Drive. That night, I typed up the notice myself on Maya's computer. 30-day notice to quit to Linda Whitaker and Doug Whitaker. You are hereby notified that your tenancy of the premises at 4827 Brookstone Drive is terminated as of 30 days from service of this notice. You are required to vacate and surrender the premises to the landlord on or before that date. Alternatively, Erie Threshold Holdings, LLC is prepared to offer a 12-month lease agreement at market rate of $2,400 per month, with the following terms: first month and security deposit due upon signing rent due on the first of each month, late fee of $125 plus 5% after the 5th day, quarterly inspections with 24-hour notice, no cash payments, certified check or ACH transfer only, no subletting or short-term rentals permitted. Please contact our property management at the number below within 7 days to indicate your intention. Maya reviewed it, added some legal language about Ohio Revised Code, Chapter 5321, then had it printed on official Harbor Row legal letterhead. You want to serve it yourself? She asked. No, I said, though every part of me wanted to see Linda's face. Let's do this right. Process server, official service, signed receipt. I want everything documented. Reed had already started preparing for the next phase. They'll call the number on the notice, try to negotiate. You need to decide, do you reveal yourself then, or make them sweat longer? I thought about Doug's smirk as the locksmith changed the locks, Linda's dismissive wave as I loaded my car. Let them sweat, I said. They can negotiate with their new landlord at the lease signing, if they choose to sign. The courtroom at 9 a.m. felt like a refrigerator, all fluorescent lights and recycled air. I sat in the third row, anonymous in a crowd of property investors and house flippers, holding bitter paddle number 47. Reed had coached me for an hour that morning. Don't look up, don't react to bids, keep your movements minimal. The auctioneer, a bored-looking man in his 60s, read through the preliminary notices in a monotone that could cure insomnia. Sheriff's sale pursuant to court order. Properties sold as is. 10% deposit required immediately upon winning bid. 4827. Brookstone Drive was lot number 12. 3-bedroom, 2-bath residential property. Minimum bid $168,000. Do I hear 170? A flipper in a Cowboys jersey raised immediately. I recognized him from YouTube. Flip This Cleveland, always bragging about his profit margins. The rental company woman countered at 175. I waited. 180, 185, 190. The bidding slowed at 200,000. Cowboys jersey was doing math on his phone, probably calculating repair costs against resale value. I'd made sure the inspection report was public record. All $40,000 of necessary repairs documented with photos. He shook his head and lowered his paddle. 205,000, the rental company woman said. I raised my paddle for the first time. 210. She turned to look at me, trying to size up the competition. I kept my eyes on the auctioneer's podium. Maya's advice echoing, look bored. Look like you do this every day. 215, she countered. 220. I said. Voice flat. Cowboys jersey jumped back in at 225, probably thinking he'd scared off the amateurs. The rental woman went to 230. I bumped to 235. 240, Cowboys said, but his voice had lost its confidence. 245. From rental woman. I waited 3 full seconds, let them think I was out, then raised my paddle one more time. 252. The room went quiet. The auctioneer looked between the three of us. Cowboys was already packing up his notebook. The rental woman stared at her phone, probably checking her maximum approved bid. 252,000 going once. She started to raise her paddle, then stopped. Going twice? Cowboys had already left the room. Sold to bidder number 47. My hand stayed perfectly steady as I signed the purchase acknowledgement, wrote the cashier's check for the deposit, accepted the sheriff's deed paperwork. But in the courthouse bathroom afterward, I sat in a stall and shook for 10 minutes straight. The closing happened 14 days later in a sterile conference room at First National Bank. Maya signed everything as my representative Erie Threshold Holdings. LLC's managing member was officially listed as a nominee service in Delaware. The bank's attorneys never questioned it. Cash deals buying distressed properties through LLCs were standard practice in their world. At 2:43 p.m., the wire transfer cleared. At 2:44 p.m., the deed was recorded with the county. At 2:45 p.m., I owned my parents' house. The next morning, I had a process server deliver the 30-day notice to quit. I parked down the street, watched through binoculars I'd bought specifically for this moment. The server knocked 3 times before Linda answered in her bathrobe, coffee mug in hand. "Linda Whitaker," he asked. "Yes, you've been served." He handed her the envelope, took a photo of the delivery, and left before she could process what had happened. I watched her rip open the envelope on the porch, reading it once, twice, 3 times. Her face went from confused to pale to furious red. She screamed for Doug. I could hear it from my car, and he stumbled out in boxers and a torn undershirt. They stood on the porch I'd repaired, under the light fixture I'd installed, reading about how their new landlord required $2,400 a month in rent. My phone rang an hour later. The number Reed had set up for the LLC forwarded to my cell. "This is bullshit," Linda's voice screeched through the speaker. "We know what you're doing. You vultures buy houses and force families out. We have rights." "Ma'am," I said, using the professional voice from my logistics job, "Erie Threshold Holdings is offering you a lease at market rate. The alternative is vacating the property within 30 days. $2,400, that's insane. It's actually below market for a 3-bedroom in Lakewood. Comparable properties are renting for $2,600 to $2,800. Would you like to schedule a time to review the lease agreement?" She hung up. Doug called next, trying the tough guy approach. "Listen here, whoever you are, we're not going anywhere. We'll fight this in court. Sir, you're welcome to seek legal counsel. However, the sheriff's sale was conducted according to Ohio law. Erie Threshold Holdings is the legal owner of the property. The lease offer stands for 7 days. You don't know who you're messing with. All communication should go through our legal representative at Harbor Row Legal. Have a good day." On day 6, they called to schedule the lease review. Maya set it for the following afternoon, in her office's main conference room, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of Lake Erie. "They don't know it's me," I confirmed for the 100th time. "Not until you walk through that door," Maya said. "Everything's been through the LLC. Even the signature they'll see on the lease is mine as your representative." I spent that night choosing my outfit. Nothing too expensive. I didn't want to look like I'd suddenly come into money. But not my summit and crew uniform either. I settled on the blazer I'd bought for job interviews I never went to, the one that had hung in the closet at Brookstone Drive until I'd stuffed it in a garbage bag during my eviction. "Ready?" Maya asked the next afternoon. Hand on the conference room door. Inside. I could hear Linda complaining about the late fees, Doug grumbling about the inspection requirements. "Ready," I said, and walked into my parents' future. Maya opened the conference room door at precisely 2 p.m., letting me enter 2 minutes after my parents had been seated. I'd practiced this entrance 50 times in my mind, shoulders back, neutral expression, folder of documents held like armor. Linda was mid-complaint about the security deposit when she saw me. Her mouth stayed open, words dying in her throat. Doug's coffee cup stopped halfway to his lips. Piper, who'd been scrolling through her phone, looked up and immediately started recording. "Hello, Mom, Doug." I set my folder on the polished conference table and pulled out the chair directly across from them. "I understand you're interested in leasing my property." "Your what?" Linda's voice cracked. "This is some kind of joke." "Erie Threshold Holdings, LLC. I'm the managing member. I slid the LLC's operating agreement across the table, my name highlighted in yellow. I purchased 4E827 Brookstone Drive at Sheriff's sale 2 weeks ago. Cash sale. Clean deed. Doug slammed his cup down, coffee sloshing onto Maya's expensive table. You can't, that's illegal. That's our house. Was, Maya interjected smoothly. Past tense. The foreclosure sale was properly noticed and conducted according to Ohio Revised Code, Chapter 2329. I pulled out the tenant ledger I'd prepared, 7 years of my payments highlighted in green. Every mortgage payment from June 2017 through March 2024, $93,000, not including the roof, HVAC, or repairs. You're right. Doug, someone did pay for that house. Me? Linda's face had gone from pale to crimson. We're your parents. You were my landlords who evicted me with 72 hours' notice. Now I'm your landlord offering you 30 days or a lease. Circle of life. I spread 3 documents across the table. The inspection report with 40,000 in code violations, photos of the electrical hazards Doug had created, and the lease agreement. Option 1, I said, using my logistics coordinator voice, the one I used when explaining delay penalties to trucking companies. Sign a 12-month lease, $2,400 monthly, due on the 1st. Late fees of $125 plus 5% after day 5. Mandatory inspection every 90 days. Those code violations need addressing. No subletting, no Airbnb, no cash economy under my roof. Under your... Doug started to stand. Maya's paralegal stepped closer to the door. Option 2, I continued. Vacate within 21 days. I'll need the property in broom-clean condition. All keys returned. Final walkthrough documented. Any damage beyond normal wear and tear will result in civil action for recovery. Piper finally spoke, her phone still recording. You can't kick us out. We have rights. You have 21 days of rights, Maya clarified. After that, Sheriff's Department handles the eviction. Forcible detainer, removal of property to the curb. Very public, very photographable. I pulled out my phone and showed them a photo Mrs. Kincaid had sent it to me, thinking she was being helpful. It showed my belongings on the curb the day they'd evicted me. Linda standing in the doorway with that satisfied smile. You taught me how this works, I said. 72 hours. Right. That's what family does to family. I'm giving you 21 days. I'm practically generous. Linda's hands shook as she grabbed the lease, scanning the terms. This is vindictive. This is business. I finished. Nothing personal. Isn't that what you told me? I pulled out the Erie Threshold Holdings bank card, set it on the table like a poker player showing their hand. Rent goes here. AIC transfer or cashier's check only. I run a clean operation, everything documented, everything taxable, everything legal. Doug's face had turned purple. You think you've won something? You think this makes you better than us? No, I said, and for the first time, I looked him directly in the eye. It makes me your landlord, the one you pay on the 1st of every month or face legal consequences. Maya slid the lease across the table with a pen. Initial each page, sign and date the last page. If you choose to vacate instead, we'll need that in writing today. Linda looked at the paper like it might bite her. What about everything we put into that house? I pulled out one last document, the HELOC statement showing the $38,000 they'd withdrawn the week of my eviction. You mean this, the money you took out using equity I built. That's gone, Mom, spent on Doug's truck and whatever pyramid scheme you bought into. But hey, I smiled, the same tight smile she'd given me during my eviction. Nothing personal. You're enjoying this, Piper accused, finally lowering her phone. I'm conducting business, I replied. Sign or don't sign, but decide now. This offer expires when you leave this room. Linda's pen hovered over the signature line. If we sign, you'll leave us alone. No revenge harassment. I'll be the most professional landlord you've ever had. Maintenance requests answered within 48 hours. Property improvements as needed. 24-hour notice for inspections. Everything by the book. I paused. Of course. That means everything you do is by the book, too. First violation of lease terms triggers cure or quit proceedings. Doug grabbed the pen from Linda, signed with angry slashes. Linda followed, her signature smaller than usual. Defeated. Congratulations, I said, standing. You're now tenants of Erie Threshold Holdings. First month and security deposit are due immediately. That's $4,800. Cash economy isn't acceptable, so I hope you have it in the bank. As I reached the door, Linda called out, "How could you do this to your mother?" I turned back, thought of all the things I could say. Instead, I pulled out the key ring from my pocket, new locks I'd had installed that morning. These are mine now. You'll get copies once the deposit clears. Until then, the lockbox code is your move-out date the day you evicted me. The Facebook post went live at 6:17 p.m. that evening. Linda had tagged every relative, neighbor, and casual acquaintance she could think of. Our own daughter has stolen our home through legal trickery. Avery Collins is forcing her elderly parents into poverty. Share if you believe in family values. By 7 p.m., my phone was exploding. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years calling me heartless. Great Aunt Patricia leaving voicemails about respecting your elders. The neighbors' Ring cameras catching Linda going door to door with her sob story. Doug trailing behind with his own version involving words like backstabbing and ungrateful. I documented everything. Thursday morning, I found the doorbell camera I'd installed 6 months ago, the one they'd promised not to touch, ripped from its mount and smashed on the driveway. The security company had the footage saved to the cloud, dug with a hammer at 11:43 p.m., Linda standing watch. "That's destruction of property," Maya said when I showed her, "and it violates the lease clause about alterations." I filed a police report for vandalism, case number 248847. The officer who took the report recognized the address. "Aren't you the owner?" says here Linda Whitaker is listed as former owner. I purchased it at sheriff's sale. They're tenants now. He whistled low. That's cold. That's legal. The 3-day notice to cure went out that afternoon, delivered by the same process server. Linda was outside talking to Mrs. and Kincaid, spinning her story about cruel children and elder abuse. The server walked right past their conversation, handed her the notice, photographed the delivery, and left. Linda called within the hour. $150 to replace a doorbell. $170 with installation, receipt attached. You have 72 hours to pay or cure the violation. This is harassment. This is the lease you signed. Section 4.3, no alterations to the property without written permission. She hung up and called back from Doug's phone, probably thinking I wouldn't answer. Avery, sweetheart, let's talk about this like family. All communication regarding the property goes through Harbor Row Legal. I interrupted. As outlined in your lease package, Saturday brought new tactics. Doug started parking his truck across the driveway at odd angles, blocking theoretical access. Piper set up a camping chair on the lawn with a sign, "My sister the slum lord." Linda had someone, probably her hairdresser's nephew who did computers, create a website Avery Collins exposed. I screenshot everything, backed it up to 3 cloud services, and forwarded to Maya. "They're escalating," she warned. "This could get uglier." It did. Sunday morning, every neighbor received a flyer under their door with my Summit and Crew work photo and the headline, "Predatory Landlord Lives Among You." By noon, someone had spray-painted Karma on the garage door, the one I'd helped install 3 years ago. Another police report, another notice to cure, another round of phone calls I didn't answer. The court date was set for the following Wednesday, an expedited hearing for the temporary restraining order Maya had filed on my behalf. The judge, a tired-looking woman named Horvath, reviewed the evidence, the Facebook posts, the vandalism reports, the website, the flyers. "Mrs. Whitaker," Judge Horvath said, looking over her glasses, "do you dispute that you're harassing your landlord?" "She's my daughter," Linda protested, as if that explained everything. "Is she your landlord?" "Technically, but yes or no?" Linda deflated. "Yes." And did you sign a lease agreement that specifically prohibits harassment of the landlord or their agents? Doug tried to interrupt. Your Honor, this is a family matter. This is a landlord-tenant matter. The judge corrected. With clear evidence of harassment. Temporary restraining order granted. Mrs. and Mr. Whitaker, you are prohibited from posting about the plaintiff on social media, distributing flyers, maintaining websites, or engaging in any form of harassment. Violation will result in immediate eviction proceedings and possible criminal charges. But the real showdown came the next week, when they tried to withhold rent. We're not paying until you fix the garage door, Linda announced via voicemail, apparently forgetting about the communication clause. I had Maya send the formal response. Per your lease, tenant is responsible for damage caused by tenant's actions or negligence. The police report clearly establishes the vandalism occurred while property was in your possession. Rent is due in full by the 5th or late fees apply. They didn't pay on the 1st, or the 2nd. On the morning of the 5th, I had the 3-day pay or quit notice ready. By the 6th, with no payment received, Maya filed for forcible detainer. The eviction hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. I had every document signed lease, payment records, notices served, police reports. The restraining order they'd already violated twice Piper's TikTok videos were particularly damning. Monday night, 10:53 p.m. My phone rang. Linda's number. The check will be there tomorrow, she said, voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. Cashier's check, full amount plus late fees. Delivered to the Harbor Row legal office by 9 a.m. I confirmed. Not 9:01. 9. Avery, she started. Mrs. Whitaker, I corrected. Is there anything else regarding your tenancy? The silence stretched between us like the years of broken promises. No, she finally said. The check arrived at 8:57 a.m., $2,400 plus $125 late fee plus 5% penalty, $2,645 total. I had Maya send the receipt, properly documented. Tenant ledger updated. Everything legal. Everything proper. Everything they'd never given me. The signing happened on a gray Thursday afternoon at 4 p.m., back at the house on Brookstone Drive. I'd insisted on it not out of cruelty, but for closure. The same living room where they'd celebrated my eviction would witness their surrender to a 12-month lease. I arrived 15 minutes early, walked through my property with a contractor's clipboard. The garage door had been repainted poorly, the roller marks visible even from the street. The doorbell camera mount held a cheap replacement from Home Depot. Through the window, I could see my old dining table, the one they'd kept from the curb. Maya waited in her car, giving me this moment alone. I used my key to enter my house. Linda sat on the couch I'd helped her pick out 4 years ago. The cashier's check on the coffee table I'd refinished during lockdown. $2,400 for next month's rent, another $2,400 for security deposit. Doug stood by the window, arms crossed, looking older than his 58 years. Even Piper was there, silent for once, no phone in sight. I placed the lease on the table, the same table where I'd once helped them organize their finances, where I'd written checks for their bills, where they'd promised to add my name to the deed next month. Initial each page, I said, sitting in the chair I'd bought myself. The one they'd said didn't match the decor. Sign and date the last page. Linda's hand shook as she picked up the pen. The security deposit we had to borrow it from Doug's brother. I said nothing. There was nothing to say that wouldn't sound like gloating or give them ammunition for another sob story. Doug signed next, pressing so hard the pen tore through the paper on his final initial. I had another copy ready I'd learned to prepare for their tantrums. When they finished, I pulled out a manila envelope. Inside 2 sets of keys, front door, back door, garage, each set on a ring marked "Tenant copy do not duplicate." These are yours for the duration of the lease, I said, pushing them across the table. The locks have already been changed. Your old keys won't work. Linda picked up the keys like they might burn her. For 7 years, she'd held the only set, making me knock on my own door when I'd forgotten the spare. Now she held tenant copies of keys to my house. I pulled out the inspection schedule, already filled in. First inspection is in 90 days, January 15th, 2 p.m. I'll bring a licensed contractor to assess those code violations. Any repairs needed for safety will be scheduled immediately. You're really going to inspect your parents like we're strangers? Piper finally spoke. I'm going to inspect my property like I'm a landlord, I corrected. Because that's what I am. I stood, collected the signed papers, placed them in my briefcase, the one I'd bought for the job interviews I'd never gone to because I was too busy working nights to pay their mortgage. The ACH is set up for automatic withdrawal on the 1st of each month, I said, heading for the door. Keep your bank account funded. The lease is very clear about returned payment penalties. At the door, I turned back one last time. They looked smaller somehow, sitting in the living room they'd once lorded over me in. Linda was crying silently, the kind of tears that didn't expect sympathy. Doug stared at his hands. Piper had finally pulled out her phone but wasn't recording, just holding it like a security blanket. One more thing, I said, pulling out my phone. I showed them a photo me, at age 26, the day I'd made that first mortgage payment. I was smiling, proud to be helping my family. That girl believed in you, believed family meant something. You taught her otherwise. I locked my door behind me with my key. Outside, Mrs. Kincaid was watering her petunias again, even though it was October and they were long dead. She caught my eye, nodded once. She'd known all along what they were doing to me. The whole neighborhood had known. Maya was still in her car, engine running. How do you feel? I thought about it as I looked back at 4827 Brookstone Drive. My house now, with my parents as tenants. Every first of the month, they'd pay me the rent I'd once paid for them. Every late fee, every inspection, every clause in that lease was a reminder that actions have consequences, that family isn't a free pass to exploitation. I feel like a landlord, I said. That was 3 months ago. They've paid on time twice. Late once February's check came on the 7th costed them an extra $162 in fees. The first inspection revealed Doug had tried to fix the electrical himself again. The cure notice went out the same day. They fixed it properly this time, with a licensed electrician I approved. Linda doesn't post about me on Facebook anymore. Doug doesn't glare when he sees me driving by. Piper moved out last month, apparently. Living in a house where your sister is the landlord is too weird, according to her Instagram stories. The lease expires in 9 months. Maya's already drawn up the non-renewal notice. Market rate for that house has gone up to $2,600. They'll get the option to renew at the new rate or vacate, because that's business. Nothing personal. The pen clicked against the metal clipboard one final time as I filed their latest rent receipt. $2,400, transferred on the 1st of the month, like clockwork. They'd learned to be good tenants. I'd learned to be an even better landlord. The house at 4827 Brookstone Drive is mine now. Every doorway, every wall, every memory rewritten with my name on the deed. When people ask how I became a homeowner in this market, I tell them the truth. My parents taught me everything about real estate, location, timing, and most importantly, always get everything in writing. The keys on my keyring jingle when I walk landlord keys, not tenant copies. That's what winning sounds like. That's what justice sounds like when you sign it, notarize it, and file it with the county recorder. One signature at a time. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Have you ever had to stand up to family who took advantage of you? How did you handle it? Your stories matter too.